Adaeze and Chad Brinkman. I am just so excited to have you on for real. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us. It's a
We're-
pleasure we're so excited.
I'm so glad. I am so glad because some folks know that publicists at publishing houses are very good to let us know what new books are coming out. And that is it's like a kid in a candy store when I get those catalogs because I get to pick. And I was so thrilled to see your book with the beautiful cover and also the beautiful heartbeat behind it. Your new book is called White Boy, Black Girl: What Our Differences Can Teach Us, One Awkward Conversation at a Time. And honest,
Honest conversations.
oh,
But
did
they're
I say
also
that?
probably
Did
awkward.
I say
Yeah.
awkward?
You did? Okay.
You know
Maybe
what?
that-
You know what? I think that was actually kind of the art of honest look. And you said, yeah, that was one of the things we talked about as a subtitle. So you're not far off.
We had so many adjectives that we were picking between. We had
That is hilarious. I think I'm so sorry. I think it's because the back cover copy says, let the awkward conversations begin. And so I just went right to the heart of this book, honest and awkward. You two have been married how long?
4 years.
the 4 weeks in December.
4 years. Okay. We're just meeting each other, so I haven't seen you in real life. But from what I can gather, you have done the work to have a healthy marriage and to do it with this persistent outward resistance that faces you as an interracial couple. So it's already hard to be married, and then you have other things, right, that are coming at you. And I feel like this book is such a kindness to your readers that you took the time. I can't believe in the first 4 years of marriage you tried this and you just moved to another state. So good job, guys. Why don't you add in a few more life transitions?
Yeah, we'll receive all of
We
that.
probably will. So just
Yeah, I have so many questions about what in the world you were thinking. But here's my first question. Even though this is in the format of this book, I love it is very invitational and direct, but also warm and funny. I really don't know how you pulled it off because you tackle a lot of things in this book that honestly, a lot of people just don't even want to think about, much less use language for. So my first question is, have you ever regretted writing this book? And this is what I mean. There's this section in the book. There's this part in the book where both of you say you reach saturation points of being kind of the teacher, right? Having to explain, having to come alongside people who say crazy things or ignorant things or even well-intentioned things, but you have to be the one. You both have said at different parts in this book, sometimes I just don't want to be the race person. But now you just put a book out that is fairly centered on race. So I'm wondering, have you, in the process of this, had a time when you thought, is this worth the leap? Have you regretted it ever?
yes and no. Honest questions, of course, have come up of, is this worth it? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Why did we try to kumbaya joke about the clouds or I don't know,
Just clouds.
just should, and everyone enjoy it and everyone agrees on this, which not even that everyone agrees on, but
That's true.
so many times there's even times in the book where we're like, please hold while we, cry it out together. And
Yeah.
there's so much to be learned in reliving trauma and then also sharing the trauma. But we both really believe the Lord called us is to write into the pain, and when we declare our testimonies, that's when we overcome, right? That's what the word of God says. And so, yeah, it was tough. And yeah, there were times we questioned it, which is kind of like anybody, I think. We think we all go through times like that where we don't see the reward yet, or we don't see the I yet. At least not in every single moment, but there were so many times within that God was just so kind, and He was just almost every tough thing or tough comment said to us or whatever in the process, the Lord would follow it up with His grace and confirmation that we are doing what He has asked us to do, which doesn't mean it's going to be void of pain and trauma and storms, So I feel like it grew our faith. I think for me at least, I will say it gave me a newfound confidence to honor my experiences, and to believe my experiences, even if no one else does. And so, yeah, there was all the highs and lows of it, Kim. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Not always easy, but it was 100% worth it. So,
Mm.
yes, in that it was tough, but no, I do not regret it.
I agree. The writing process was really hard.
Mm.
It took us 3 years to write. That was just because it was so emotional every step of the way. So yeah, I think during the writing process, I was absolutely kind of regretting the undertaking, to be perfectly honest.
Totally.
But the outcome, for many different reasons, but even if it's just because it forced us to go there and learn, and we got to we got to understand our marriage better. We got to understand us. And so even if that is the only outcome of this book,
Yeah.
granted, it's great hearing things from you and other people that the book has been a blessing. That's amazing. But even if it was just the restoration that we got from it, it was totally worth it. So back end, granted, we're on the beginning of the back end. So I don't know what the heck is coming in terms of how many race conversations we're gonna have or whatever that means. So talk to us in 5 years. But
I was going to say, might not have reached the saturation point yet. Well, I am super grateful that you stuck with it, because this is such an important book and it's such a unique, um, I feel like the words that you use and the way you use them, the light falls differently. And even the format of the book that you kind of toggle back and forth between the two of you, but same heartbeat, is just so wise. I do want to say, you guys are really normal people who wrote a book. You're a PT, Chad, right? Physical therapist. Well, now in charge of things at a university. And Adaeze, you are a worship leader. Like you guys, you really had a great thing going, and then you wrote a book. So I'm sure, I bet you go back to your real jobs and like, oh my gosh, these are a lot easier than writing a book. So thanks for doing that.
Well, yeah, it's funny too because I'm no longer a worship pastor, and
Okay.
so that was even part of the transition
Mm,
during writing this book.
yeah.
And so, not to like make your point even more that we are wild and crazy people for doing this, but even that was part of the transition and healing, stepping out of full time ministry after 9 years doing it. So like that has been part of my reintroduction to myself and then
Mm.
reintroduce myself to the world even. So we can maybe get into that later though.
I don't, in my experience, there's nothing that makes you face yourself like writing. There's just no place to hide, even if you want it by chapter 4. So the things that came up against you guys right as you started dating, I don't think it's hyperbole to say that I was shocked. I guess I'm very naive, particularly geographically. You were in Denver, Colorado, which I associate with, I don't know, granola and Pikes Peak. And you had, I'm telling you, you guys, there were times when I would slam down the book and say, stop it. No way. The things you had to just kind of dive into from the very beginning. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that because, and again, I'm actually kind of sorry to bring this up because there are parts of your story that I kept thinking, I know that this is 2024, right? That is the year. And I was honestly so surprised at some of the things that you guys came up against, overtly up against. This was not like some quiet weirdo troll on the internet. This was conversations in real life. The meaning behind this question is really for people who are listening who, like me, just cannot fathom that you actually had some of these conversations. If you can give a couple specifics, I think people don't know. I don't think they know. You know, if all we do is watch, you know, TV and listen to Oprah, we think everything's fine now. Look away. Okay. So you do what you want with that question.
As a white dude myself too, I realized very quickly my own blind spots because my wife would occasionally look at me, or my girlfriend at the time, or actually not even girlfriend. We were going through the Christianese courting phase, and already hitting stuff like this. So it was an interesting thing to go through. One, relationally, just because as a couple to go through this, we say all the time that we weren't really afforded the rose-colored lenses
Yeah.
because we were smacked in the face with some of this really hard stuff immediately, and we are so much stronger now because of it, because we had to immediately put a stake in the ground and say, no, I actually really care for this person, and I'm going to walk forward regardless of what that means. And so it was a really hard time early on, and we talk about it in the book a little bit too, where we almost broke up. And it's truly it's a gift of God. It's His mercy alone that we made it to today, because there was hard stuff, and even stuff. I just, as a white guy, I wouldn't expect any of this. But even something as simple as the story we tell walking into the grocery store, and we are shopping with our basket in hand, loaded up, and Days is carrying the clear towels or toilet paper, and we're laughing and joking and hip checking each other, walking up to the register. And the dude throws his hands up and says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Is this together or separate?" Like, yeah. And it's so jarring, because at first it's like, okay, that might be a decent question. Yet then okay, your face says it all.
Like, not really. That's definitely
really.
never happened with me and my white husband. Never. Someone looked at Mark and be like, do you want to just take yours? Like,
Exactly. So we walk away from that, and Adaeze knows exactly what is happening, right? This is something that's happened to her in her life. She gets it. Or even simple things like walking up to a gas station cashier and him or her looking only at me, never looking at Adaeze here. And it's something that you have to wrap your head around, because for me, I don't see something as simple as eye contact ever being made, because it feels natural, maybe especially because I was independent until late in my 20s. So I'm used to just being the only person in an interaction. But once you wrap your head around, okay, no, this person is completely ignoring the person beside me, or are you together a separate conversation? It's like the assumption is that there's no way that you two can even know each other or be around each other and be cool with that. It's hard to actually put into words the mental game that starts to happen, because eventually what ends up happening is you go into every single conversation not necessarily expecting it, but you're ready for that moment just in case it does happen. And so it's where the whole conversation of what does this have to do with race comes from. It's not that everything has to do with race. It's just it's our own defense mechanisms have already started to build in that moment before we walk into a situation, just because of our history. And so the mental toll it takes on us personally starts to build. And luckily we have each other in this conversation, and we can go immediately away from that cashier at the grocery store and process and end up laughing at it about how ridiculous it was. But there are also those moments where you don't have the time to process. And so if I feel like I'm getting away from the question just a little bit, but what it ends up doing to us, it puts us on our back feet, puts us on our back foot, on the back foot. Whatever.
Yeah, right. Totally. On the defensive, and wondering where I think what I would imagine is that the uncertainty layer is just always there. What is behind this? Is there something behind this? Do I need to step into this conversation? And again, circling back to where we started, knowing when to pick what battle and when your saturation point is. I don't really want to educate the cashier that she can make eye contact with me, right? I'm just imagining that is wearying as a brand new couple, that you'd also have to be talking about that. And you picked a soft pitch there, Chad, because there are other examples that were even more blatant and hurtful, and from people that you know and love. And so, Adaeze, why don't you talk a little bit about um, the pressure you feel in those moments that you write about? You write about this in your book, that there is a certain pressure to represent an entire group of people. I feel like that's an unfair expectation, and I bet you feel it. And Chad, you write about how you feel that too. So I'd love to talk about that. There's this absolutely horrendous moment in a church that you had to endure when the staff of that church used the N word. You were not in the room, you were within earshot. I mean, you might as well have been staring at the person, you were so close. First, I want to say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that that would be ever your experience, but that it would be in a place where the name of Jesus is lifted up is so wrong and despicable. And how you had to navigate that moment and those emotions and the injustice of it in a place where we talk about freedom and identity and the one who gave all for us all. I can't even imagine how traumatic that must have felt. Of all the places in the world where you should feel safe, that's it. And you didn't. Talk to us about that, because I think that one of the things that we can do with each other as people of all shades and all skin tones and all backgrounds is just to decide, oh, you represent to me this group of people. And that is an unfair burden to hold. So can you talk to me about that, about how when you are the only Black woman in a room, Black person in a room, there is something on your shoulders that says, okay, now I have to like, are you scanning and deciding this is not just that I have to be me, but I have to be all?
Hmm. Wow. And that's some good questions right there. First of all, thank you for your kindness and just sisterly love to me and sitting with us and our experience. That is something we don't take lightly anymore. Um, yeah, so much of what you said was like, I feel seen. Just the way you're describing things, because it's not even just that I am scanning, kind of how you put it, and kind of calculating in my head, do I, or even how do I, right, bring up this thing? There's like always the, well, if I bring up this one, is there going to be a worse one later that now I'll said so much too soon, and now I become the Black girl that always talks about race, but this one's
Whoa.
really stop, you know?
Whoa.
Or, well, this one's really messed up, but will there be a worse one later that I should save?
Whoa,
Like,
so like poker chips,
city.
like you can only spend so many?
Yeah.
Ah,
Because even capacity, why all of us, right? Not
yeah.
just color or anything, but all of us have limited capacity anyway. And so for me, what I started to realize is that I have not only limited capacity socially, I have limited capacity like in this realm of racial conversations, teaching, being the stand-in Black person for whatever action is being done. Like, so that's why, especially in the book, we talk about like some of my I just won't moments, because what started to happen to me too was I would start to feel this guilt for, especially at a church, not like teaching and being loving. And I put that in quotes because it's like the love your neighbor as yourself command is actually, people forget the as yourself part. Like you have to love yourself first before you can actually love your neighbor. So I would forget the as yourself part and just be like, hey, well, I'm being asked to do this jumpy opener again, even though I also can do the chill songs, because it starts to put the question, oh, was it because I'm the only Black one? That they're like, you are the energizing, let's do it person, you know? And that's not even to say that that's the reason, but that's what happens. It's like the constant mental game that I can get
Gymnastics.
lost in
Mhm.
is exhausting.
Yeah.
And it's honestly, it's not fair to the other side that I would constantly be questioning their actions, but because of how the world is, because of this demonic power of racism,
Mm.
that is the effect, right? That's what it does. It doesn't only build walls between people from visible actions and hurtful things in the open, like the overt stuff. It builds walls with the underlying things, or the things that aren't even said, or the things that, like, well, I don't want to be the stand-in Black person that misrepresents everyone, so let me not say anything and keep the peace. And it just gets exhausting, So that's something I really had to grow in, and it's a constant, never ending in my life growing journey, is to not feel shame when I don't feel this is my place to teach, say anything, or stand up, or defend, or explain myself, like whatever. And to not feel shame if the way that I do show up in those ways isn't perfectly acceptable to the other party. That's something that I really attacked myself with, was like, well, I'm not being the perfect Black person, like we talk about in the book, and the perfect white person. We have 2 chapters about that. And the huge grace for me was just like, I can be imperfect, because if perfection is the goal, I will whoop the try out of myself, because I will never be that. And that's what that situation you brought up really taught me. It was like, I did everything. I tried to do everything to the T and correctly, even though I was hurting and mortified and alone, but I still tried my best, and it still wasn't good enough. That's the lie I believed, because of how I was being treated. But the truth is, no, it was good enough. If I give 100% of my 20%, that's my 100%,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's been my journey throughout even writing this book and reliving a lot of things, and like going back to those moments and telling old me, like, hey, you did your best.
Yeah.
That is all you can do. And you're okay. That was really healing for me to
Oh.
go and do for myself.
Many Black people, and maybe other people of color, feel like they need to protect the feelings of white people. I mean, let's just have you guys talk about that, because that's equally horrifying. I have a lot of horrifying information, and your book is so hopeful. By the way, there's so much hope. It's so much
Your book
good
is hopeful.
stuff.
Hey, thank you so much.
Buying it today. How do we protect each other and have these honest questions and honest conversations that you're talking about in the book?
Yeah, it's difficult
Yeah.
because at some point, what it means is kind of like we were talking about with the writing process. At some point, that means that I have to address myself and understand where I'm coming from, and understand what that means, or even just understand my ignorance in the moment.
Uh-huh.
Understand that I don't really know what's going on, and now I can approach the situation in a totally different mindset. And I can let Adaeze talk clearly, or what'd you say? Yeah, I can let Adaeze talk more honestly. I can let her talk more full of emotion,
Mhm.
full of what she's feeling,
Mhm.
and understand that she's not calling me racist. She's telling me an experience that she's been having.
Yeah.
Which are 2 totally different things. But most of the time, the first time us white people hear anything that's race related, we immediately internalize that and say, oh, you're calling me that. Where I've found that me and my wife were talking about this stuff, and I'm internalizing it, and she's saying, no, that's just what I've experienced.
Yeah.
Well, but I want you to see me. And so that's the hard balance. It's trying to figure out how we can make a really emotionally charged conversation just honest, and not take on what the conversation is actually saying. And this is like, we talk about this. So Rick's always adds a different element, right? It will always add a different area, just because it's the politicized race conversation. It's the emotional race conversation. It's a historical conversation. Yeah, there's spiritual elements, all of this. It's a huge thing. But if we really boil it down, if we were going to talk to people about just being a married couple, the same principles apply, right? If I go to my wife and she's telling me something about a way that I hurt her, naturally I'm going to want to get defensive. Naturally, I'm going to want to put the barriers up. I'm going to start seeing red if I'm not going into this in a healthy way. But when I do that, we don't get anywhere. Together, we don't get anywhere. But if I'm able to slow down and hear her. Now the conversation goes a completely different direction. And now we come together and we get on a level playing field. So as much as this is a unique conversation because we're talking about race, at the same time, it's kind of not. It's the same
Right.
thing. It's just so much more emotional and so much
Right.
more polarizing. We just have to try harder to get there.
Yeah. I love this. There's this little phrase that you use over and over in the book that I'm going to steal. And you talk about when you have missed each other, which is your word for misunderstood or had some conflict or just didn't hear each other well, didn't listen well. And I think that's a big part of what you're saying. To not miss each other requires some care and attention and some staying, some
Yeah.
steadfastness.
Mm.
And you model it so beautifully. You write about it so beautifully. Um, I have one more question about this kind of how we decide when we are saying something, when we are stepping into the conversation. And I know we've talked about how it's easy to feel or just to pay attention, as you said, Adaeze, to when we are feeling saturated or our capacity's over. I'm not going to have this conversation. I really need to go home and take a nap or whatever. And sometimes I would imagine you don't even feel the luxury of being able to do that. Like sometimes maybe when you don't want to, you have to anyway. How do we decide what battle to pick? I'm talking to both of you for sure. You've gone you've gone through things from family, friends. This is a doozy. Asking Chad in front of you, Adaeze, can she understand me? That when I had to put the book down for a bit and take a lap. Okay, right in front of you. Or as you mentioned, the cashier at the grocery store, other people who are just, there's this one of the pivotal moments in your book is when you're at a restaurant and just the things that you've had to decide, okay, is this where we stay? Is this where we remain? Do we get up and go? Do we have a conversation about this? I would love for you to talk about that, not just as an interracial couple, but also people who are, I mean, any friendship of two people from different backgrounds and races and skin colors. When do we say something and when do we pick up our bags and say, I cannot, this isn't it? Because I'm guessing for you two, this is not something that happens once a year. So you're probably having to make decisions of when do you enter in? When do we enter in? Coach us all on this very big question that is very difficult, and I should have sent it to you beforehand.
Woof. Yeah. What's wild about that question, Kim, is that it's different for everybody. So it's
Okay,
just like
that's
it's
helpful though.
yeah, it stinks that there's not one rule
Mm,
for all people everywhere. That would be so much easier. But I've learned like, especially like say we're talking about two people from different backgrounds, different capacities, different emotions, all things, all different expressions of emotions. Um, what is so tough about that is that one person will be at their limit and be like, "This is enough," and the other person's like, "Wait, what? Wait, like, why are you overreacting?"
uh-huh,
You know,
uh-huh.
so often. And so I think a huge thing that we can do, this is not exactly answering your question just yet, but a huge thing we can do to support each other when we do reach that point is to recognize we are not the same and to not, like Chad was talking about, like project ourselves onto other people. Well, I don't feel like this is a limit. My other black friend is fine with me using that word. So, like that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. That's where it gets really damaging for even us to trust our own experiences again and to
Mm,
say like, no, this is my limit, and I would love your support or whatever, but it's beyond other people supporting us in that. I think a way that we can know when is enough and when should say something, when all that, something that I do at least is to kind of check inwardly. When I'm starting to feel my inner pressure rise or starting defensive or uncomfortable. Uncomfortable isn't right because I think we can confuse being uncomfortable with being unsafe. So that's where for me, I know we gotta trust the Holy Spirit. But from my own experience, when I start feeling something inside that's like this is not it, kind of what you said earlier, that's when I need to check, okay, is this like outside of me, like not under my control? Or is there something I can do to make this better? I know that sounds super simple, but something Lord has taught me is just like, I never have to stay uncomfortable. Like I never have to remain in an environment, in an emotional state, whatever, longer than I want. So something's got to change, either my attitude or like my action. Like I have to do something to change it, or I need to just realize this is maybe past trauma, this is whatever, and I'm safe. I'm okay, So I think so often we have gotten so used to discomfort or putting ourselves last for everyone else or whatever it is that we almost don't trust ourselves anymore to say like, no, this is not, my spirit is not aligned with this, whatever's happening. And then we don't trust ourselves to do anything. And then we end up blaming everybody else for the situation that we're still in, even though we have the power to change it. The Lord's given us the authority to actually do something about it. And so for me, that's something that I've learned. It's like, okay, so do I need to speak? Do I need to move? Or do I need to inwardly do something?
Yeah.
And so that might not be the best answer for a lot of
That's
people.
a great answer. That's a great answer.
A, B, C, or D. But yeah, that's something I've learned. Yeah.
That's a lot for you to be ingesting at, before paying the tab at a restaurant. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, I hear what you're saying in maybe a more prolonged relationship. But you're also dealing with this in the wild, like on any given day. You've got to be tired. It has to be very tiring.
Yeah. And that's why sometimes it's like, is this even a safe environment or a smart environment to do X, Y, Z to unravel all this?
Yeah.
You were also hitting at kind of reflection, like ability to be self-reflective, because also every moment can be different for the same person. Right? It depends on what we're able to give in that moment. And so I think one thing that helps when deciding when to actually speak or say something is being a little bit self-reflective and understanding where you are. If I am tapped for the day, maybe it's just not a good conversation for me to jump into. Maybe I've had a great day and I'm in a great place. Maybe I can jump into the conversation. This doesn't help for the single moment things like a restaurant, but this helps more relationally.
Yeah.
If we're really gonna dive, it does take relational clout to get there. If we were strangers on the road, and I go up to Adaeze and say, "Hey, what's it like to be Black?" Yes, it's cringeworthy, right? But and not just that, actually, at least as long as we've known each other, that hasn't happened to you. But has that happened to you? Has someone said, "Well, that's just strange." At church, people do stuff like that. Yeah, pseudo strangers. But so one, it does take a little bit of relational clout, and then I think I say this in the book more as the listener, but I think it's also true of the speaker too. As a listener, we need to recognize that the story isn't for us to hear. The story is for them to tell. And so as a storyteller, I think that's also true too. I'm telling my story not in a situation like this, sure, I'm telling my story for people to hear. But most of the time in daily life, my story is my story to tell. It's not for that person to hear. So if that's kind of my quick judgment, do I want to tell this person? Am I emotionally stable enough for this moment to tell a good story? And two, do I want to give this person my story? Am I ready to emotionally expend the energy it takes to tell that story? If not, okay, I'll sit.
Yeah. Yeah, these are precious things, the stories we hold. So not all moments, not all people can hold fast to them. That's just the truth. And I can imagine how you've had to navigate that on a completely heightened level. You guys make a really powerful case for seeking out relationships with people who are different. There's a beautiful section in the book that I won't read out loud because I want people to buy the book. Spending time together just what you were saying, spending time together allows us to know who can hold these things, right? This is for all relationships. Who can dip into the friendship piece and who, as you just said, is wanting like a soundbite. Tell me how it feels to be Black. That feels like not a lot of care with that question. So I agree with you. I'm nodding wholeheartedly in this section of the book. Yes, yes, absolutely. We need to know each other. Here is my question. How do we do this? How do we pursue relationships with people who are not like us without making that person feel like a project?
I think the first thing is placing yourself in circles where it's easy to not make that person a project.
Okay, talk to me more
If
about
we
that.
sit and so granted, if we're in places that are 95% white, okay, sure, that statement becomes very difficult. So I'll hold that in tandem with what I'm about to say. But I think if you place yourself in places that have more diversity, and not necessarily just, well, let me finish that statement first. If you place yourself in locations where there's more diversity, now you have more ability to just get to know people, and statistically speaking, you're going to make friends of different races. But I think also if you're in a place like parts of the US where there's really not a lot of racial diversity, there is some sort of diversity, whether that's socioeconomic or I don't know, education level or ways of life are different. And so if you place yourself when we place ourselves in places where it's mimics of ourselves around us, it's comfortable. But what that allows us to do is continue that I don't know if it's a modern day need or if it's just something that we've done through history, but we tend to just put ourselves on the person in front of us and start with that. Start with, I'm looking at me, or I'm looking at another version of me. And so let me treat this person like me. And so if you live in a circle where you are in that type of a location, it's really easy to do that and get by with it for a long time. But the second you start to branch out to people who have different life experiences than you, the quicker your own version of yourself being portrayed back to you starts to fall apart.
Mm.
And once that starts to fall apart, now you actually start to see other people for who they are before superimposing yourself on that person. So yes, I think the racial conversation, if we're just talking about the racial part of it, it does necessitate some racial diversity around you. But there are also other ways to be able to enter into this conversation when you step into it.
I think something we've also learned is that time is so important with relationships across, I'll just say differences, whether it's race, socioeconomic stuff, or whatever. Because something we've seen a lot is like when there's one person representing this different from you people, it's easy to kind of use them as like almost like a cheat, like a Google cheat of like, what is it like to XYZ? And
Right.
and then we just kind of want them to speak for all people that are like them, aka different from us, instead of you realizing this is one person. And sure, they might speak for a lot of people, but they don't speak for everybody. And when we take them out of the like, you are my gateway to all these other people, it helps us see people just as individuals, as who they are, image bearers of God, who are different from us and different from everyone. Like we are also different from them. Like they're not the only one that's different, right? And then we're able to just appreciate them for who they are without trying to rush to like knowing all the things about them, which I think that's really what makes people feel like projects is like, why are you like kind of almost like, you don't seem to want to know me for me. You want to know me so that you can say you know, aka, for example, Black people or whatever.
No, we've talked about this a lot at our house. The high school where my kids go is almost a direct breakdown of the racial makeup of our country in proportion. And so, which always surprises people because we're in Iowa and most people assume we're all white farmers. I am white and I'm not a farmer. So we've talked about that a lot, and definitely starting in 2020, I had 3 teenagers at home and we're talking about, okay, well, we know what we want our world to look like, and we know what we want our friendships to look like, but there's a gap there. How do we traverse the gap? And sometimes it's been very disheartening to me to hear about, you know, even in a very diverse high school, what the lunchroom looks like and how there are still those what feels to a high schooler like an impenetrable divide. So that conversation comes up, like how do we, I think, and you're answering it beautifully. How do we make that not such a chasm? It's time. It's time and sitting and remaining and not a flyby, right? And for adults as well, not I mean, Adaeze, you have so many versions of this story in the book of what feels like a drive-by check-in. You doing okay? My one black friend, are you doing okay? Friend in quotes, right? Can you represent to me how you are doing, capital U? And that's not sitting, that's not remaining, that's not having a relationship, which is where all the good stuff comes. Why is it a problem within this context to say, because I can hear this from folks, and I have heard this from folks, why is it a problem to say, you know what, I just don't even see color? I think the comment might be well intentioned. But I'm not sure that it's helping the recipient feel any more seen or understood or valued. And also, I think I've only heard white people say this.
Yeah. Let me start this from a white dude who has said that in his past.
Yeah.
Um, what it actually kind of goes back to what I was saying a minute ago. When we say I don't see color, what we're saying is that I refuse to see you as you are.
Ah,
Because it's so skin color skin color shouldn't do this, but sometimes or most of the time it does reflect a life,
mm,
right? So if I go up to a person of color and say, no, you're just a person to me, I don't see color, really what I really am doing is superimposing my own skin color on top of them and saying, I see you as normal to me. I see you as what everybody is, which in my head, if I start to say I don't see color, is I am allowing everyone to look the same, which because I am white will naturally mean that everyone is white in my eyes. So if I say I don't see color, what I'm actually saying is, wife, your history of parents who immigrated from Nigeria to England to the States and how that affected everything in your childhood growing up, I choose not to see that. So that's why seeing color is important because we want to see what makes the person who they are.
Yeah. I hear the heart. We hear the heart behind that sentence. I think the intent is usually gold. It's just the impact is not at
mhm,
all. And I there are times when that is said, and I'm like, should I say thank you? Like, what are you expecting from me?
right,
Am I supposed to be
right,
impressed that
yeah,
you don't? You're bragging that you don't see the way that God intentionally created all different from each other and beautifully and wonderfully made. You are bragging that you don't see that. Why? I treat everyone the same. Do you? Like, let's just be real. Really is where my mind starts going. And it's also like, yeah, exactly what Chad's saying. Like I think the goal is kind of like I want to treat everyone the same, no matter what differences they hold from me, from anyone else. I get that. But what I'm more impressed with is not that you refuse to see differences, is that you see them and you still treat everybody with love and kindness and
that's
respect.
it.
Would be more impressive is I see color and I love everybody.
Yeah,
Really.
right. Yeah.
Let's just break it down. What you're trying to get at is your actions, right? And how
Hmm.
do you treat just treat people
Yeah.
gold anyway.
Yeah.
See me and everything that makes me me. See my beautiful darker skin than yours. See the fact that I don't really have to wear sunscreen. But see the fact that I am even on the surface different from you and you're different from me. See that our experiences are different. See that the way we look at life is different. and still sit with me
Yeah.
and still love me, still let me sit with you, still let me love you. That is what is impressive. That is what is loving. Like this whole I will see color lie, really, unless you're actually colorblind, of course, but like it doesn't
I
actually
think even
achieve.
colorblind people can see differences. So that was nice of you to give them a little pass, but nope, they're even on the hook too.
I try. But it doesn't achieve what the person is trying to achieve to the person that it's being said to. Never. I don't think it ever has.
Yeah, I think this is what's so beautiful about the whole book, and you're landing the plane, that um, if we take the time to hear the story and to not say, I see nothing, from a posture of fear, really. I mean, I think that's what's behind that. Let's not talk about this. This has become such an issue, such a thorny conversation. Let's not have the conversation. What beautiful things might happen if we slowed down, listened better, and ask the question, and then really listen. Or don't ask any question. Let that become an organic conversation, not that we're forcing, but that comes out of authentic relationship. Everything changes. Everything changes. And then it's not rooted in fear and other. It's us together. I want to read one quick thing before I let you two go. You say, we're still not where we want to be. There's still not a weightlessness of being all that we are at all times. Growth is happening, though. Reconciliation is happening, even if it's a slow process. A genuine relationship isn't achieved in a lightning rod moment and then everything's all good. It's a beautiful journey, one that we are all slowly and steadily walking together. You two have given us such a beautiful picture of good things happening, and that we don't ignore what has happened in order to get to the good things ahead. And so I just want to thank you for taking the time to write this book. I think you were absolutely insane to do that in this time of your life. And I honor you for it. And thank you for it, because I really think you are allowing us to step into something that a lot of folks just would rather not. It just feels too big and too heavy. And you've given us tools to do life in the way that it's meant to be. Not without stepping into it, but to stick with each other when we make mistakes, and to see just beautiful growth that comes on the other side. So thank you both, Brinkmans, for doing this for us. I'm so, so grateful.
Thank you, Kim. So good to meet you. So good to chat with you. Thank you for having us on the show.
Yeah. Do you want to know the books that we're reading right now? Isn't that
I was gonna let you go because I thought that you had to rush out, but I always ask my guests, what are you reading? I'm always curious. What's on the nightstand? Oh, God, I was trying to give you a pass. I thought you were we'd gone over.
Pass us? Oh, well. You want to go, Bert? Because you brought it up.
Oh, you go, Bert.
You really?
Sure. I can go, Bert. The book that I'm reading right now is called The Myth of Normal. The Myth of Normal.
Okay.
By Dr. Gabor Mate. Awesome,
Okay.
awesome book. Really, really interesting. Yeah, go check that out.
Okay.
And then
The Myth of Normal.
a book that The Myth of Normal. And then a book that I finished not too long ago that I think everyone needs to read, and it's also really short and easy, is called The Lion Tracker's Guide to Life. It's by Boyd Bart.
By who? I didn't catch the author.
Boyd Varty.
Okay.
V-A-R-T. Also incredible, incredible read. Great storyteller, but also so many good little life nuggets out of it.
Okay. Those are fantastic. I've heard of neither of them. Adding them to the list. Fantastic. Okay, Adaeze.
Yes. Right now, I am reading a book called Power Moves by Sarah Jakes Roberts.
Okay.
It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. So much deprogramming happening for Pico's past, like trauma responses and all the things. It's just so good. There are moments in the book where I'm like, she knows my number. Like she knows what's happening in my life. She's speaking.
Oh, that's a great moment. You have to email her now and tell her that, because now you know how this feels. Yes.
Yeah. And then another one I'm reading multiple books right now at the same time, which I realize is not the best way to finish them quickly. But they're just when books come into your life around the same time.
Oh,
you're
yes.
just all of these are good for me right now. So that's what's
I
happening.
do. Mm-hmm.
Yes, the other book I'm reading is by Melissa Urban. It's called The Book of Boundaries. And Kim, This is like
When
Lion Trekker's Guide to Life. Like this is like People Pleaser's Guide to Life.
aha, aha.
It's so good. It's so good. And she has actual like scripts that you can use, suggestions, different situations in like every single chapter. It is like, oh, it's so marked up right now and bent and everything.
Good. I love this. I love the passion with which both of you talked about. First of all, no one in my house takes me seriously when I say, I'm going to ask you about what you're reading. And you did. And secondly, Adaeze, if you start by saying Kim and then a pause, then I know I need to read the book. Like that's 100% has to happen. Oh,
Should we ask you
okay.
the same question back? What you're reading?
Oh, no one ever has, I don't think. Well, I just finished a great book called White Boy, Black Girl. I actually really, really enjoyed that book. In fact, today, as my 16-year-old was leaving the house, I said, hey, we tell each other how we can pray for each other during the day. And I said, I have an important conversation coming up today on the podcast. And she said, oh, who? And then I started to say, and she said, oh, the book you loved. So there you know. 16-year-olds do not lie. I don't know if you know that about them. I'm always reading something. Right now I'm taking a long time reading a book. It's actually right here called Jesus Through Middle Eastern Eyes. It's like a textbook. It is so good that every chapter I put it down and think, and now I need to digest that for 4 weeks. It's one of those. But it's shifting the way I read very familiar stories through a lens that I don't have. So I'm really loving that.
Who is it by?
Yes, Kenneth E. Bailey. He's probably a Dr. Bailey, but it doesn't say that. So I'll just call him Ken. Yeah, probably. Yeah. Honestly, for sure. They should give him a doctorate, even if he doesn't have one after a book like that. So I'm really, really enjoying that. So thanks for asking. No one does. Brinkman, thank you so much for joining me. Godspeed to you in this very important and beautiful work.